Hey guys, it's Line 7 back here in the Lion's Den, and I'm back at it again with another video. If you saw my first video, and the link will be in the description, I went over kind of the basics of what you need or what I'd recommend in order to start streaming. I said that after that initial overview video that I might do some follow-ups that talks more specifics about the things you need, and I wanted to do this follow-up video today to really more go into what you need system specs wise in order to actually start streaming, like what the minimum is. And you might be shocked that you probably already have what you need in order to start streaming. So with that being said, sit back, relax, and let's get into it. So in the original video, I kind of talked about the different options in which you're streaming and playing games to whatever streaming website that you're using. So obviously you have the single PC setup. So you're streaming and playing the game from one single computer. Two, you're doing the two PC setup. So you have one PC just for streaming, second PC just for gaming. And then last, it's the console setup. So it's similar to two PC setup. You got one PC for streaming, and then instead of a second PC, you're gaming from a console. In both the two PC setup and the actual gaming console setup, you're sending the video and audio feed from that second source over to your streaming PC, so then that can be aired. We talked about that in the other video about capture cards and things like that, but that's not the purpose of this video. We're talking about required specs. The reason why I brought up those three options is that depending on what option you go with, the specs your computer have are quite important, because obviously the more things you're doing in one location, so if you're gaming and streaming from the same computer, it's more workload on that one computer. Versus if you're splitting up that workload, that means each different device, whether it be a second computer or a gaming console, that's dedicated to just gaming, and then you have the other PC just dedicated to just streaming out the content there. So the first thing you want to know is what specs does your computer have? Let's start with just the streaming PC or the combination PC, that first option. Let's just say you have one computer and you want to know what you have on that computer in terms of performance wise. Take a look at this, and this is a good way to check out what kind of specs you have. So the best way for you to check to see what kind of specs your computer has would be to use a task manager. So I'm going to hit Control-Delete, and there should be some options. You probably don't see it on the recording here, but you want to hit Task Manager. See it pop up here. So I'm going to go ahead and make this big screen, and there's a couple of tabs on the left side here. You would want to go to Performance. Under this Performance tab, there's probably three main areas that you want to check out. First is CPU. So CPU here, if you go to the right here, if you follow the cursor, it'll tell you what kind of CPU your computer has. So here I have 11th gen, Intel Core i7, and specific code numbers, so you can go into more detail in terms of like the type of CPU you have. But the most important thing here is that 11th gen Intel i7. That's kind of the main key things. The next thing here is memory. So this is just going to tell you, number one, in the top right corner, the amount of RAM you have. So I have 32 gigabytes here. And then down here, it also tells you the speed. You might need the speed, but more importantly, for any kind of checking, you definitely want to know the amount of gigabytes your computer has. Lastly, you're going to want to go to GPU. So some CPUs have internal GPUs that they use, like you can tell mine has an internal one built into the CPU, but I specifically went to my separate GPU because typically if you're using a desktop and you're going to be gaming, you're going to be using that dedicated GPU to game. You want to know what specific GPU you have. So here again, hit GPU, top right corner, NVIDIA GeForce RTX 3060 laptop GPU. So whichever one you specifically have on your laptop or computer should appear here. And that's basically the best way to check out your specs. All right, so now you figured out what specs your computer has. Next thing you want to do is find out what kind of specs your programs or websites need in order to run things. So first thing I'd recommend is figuring out what program you're using and then looking up what required computer specs are needed for that program. So I'm going to jump over to myself here in a sec here, and I'm just going to show you what I looked up in order to figure out what OBS needs, since that's what I use. So to check the required specs for OBS, all I did was I Google searched OBS required specs and I got a link to their official website. So that's what you're seeing on the screen right now. So this is obsproject.com, which is their official website, and just a post here regarding system requirements. Very generic in terms of what's needed. For the most part, if your computer or laptop or device has Windows 10 on it, it's probably up to date. Um, I think Windows 10 has been around for quite a few years now. So I would imagine that most people have at least Windows 10. I've seen it on other sites where even Windows 8 is like considered like minimum specs and the Windows 10 is recommended. So I would say if you have at least like Windows 8, Windows 10, you should be good to go. Obviously on the site here, if you want to pause at any point, it says what you need for Mac and what you need for Linux. I don't have a Mac, I don't use Linux, so I don't know anything specific on that, but I know for Windows, if you have Windows 10, you should be good to go. All right, so we've looked up the specs for our program we need. What's next? Next, I'd actually look up anything to do with the actual streaming platform you're going to use. I use Twitch, so that's what I'm going to use as an example here. But I would look up their website, see if they have any requirements. Probably has to do with internet connection speeds, things like that there. So let's just cut to that and see what Twitch has to say. Looking at this now, we're actually looking through the help.twitch.tv website there. Again, just Google searching is your friend in this case here. And we just looked up the specs involving streaming at different frame rates. So you can see here, there's different types of encoding you can do: NVIDIA Invect specs and 264 specs. And again, pause the screen, go to the website ultimately, but pause the screen for the first couple here. Most people do stream at 1080p, 60 frames a second. And what you can see there is bit rate. So 60 kilobytes per second, which is not much. I think it's like 6 megabytes a second. Considering most internet packages you're getting, I think the lowest package you can get at a lot of places, don't quote me on this, but with my provider, I think they started out at like 50 megabytes download and upload. So typically with a basic internet connection, you could stream to Twitch. Obviously double check any other streaming services that you're using, and go to their help page and they should tell you what specs you need. Again, if you're using a lot of devices at the same time, it could affect your bandwidth and your ability to stream smoothly. That's when maybe you'd want to use one of these lower specs to buffer things out so that you don't have to use as much intensity when it comes to your internet connection. But pretty much any basic internet connection should work just fine. All right, so you looked up your specs of your computer. You've looked up the specs of the program that you're going to stream from. In my case, OBS. You even checked anything required for the website you're going to use to stream. So we use Twitch in the example of this video. What would be the last thing you'd want to check? Well, if you're on that single PC setup, like I mentioned, where you're going to be streaming and gaming from, every game has actually a set of required specs. Depending on what your game launcher is, I know a popular one is Steam. Typically, if you go to the information about each game, it should tell you a requirement of specs, like what your computer should have to run it. I'm not going to cut to something related to that because what game you play is so various, right? Because people play a bunch of different games. They have different launchers. I would do the research depending on how you play your games on your computer. If you use a specific game launcher, like basically how you load up your games to play, to find out what specs those games are needed. At the end of the day, if you're using a single PC, all those specs start to add up because your computer only has a finite amount of resources. So if you need so much to run OBS, you need to make sure you have a strong enough internet connection to stream consistently to Twitch or whatever streaming platform you're streaming to. And then again, you're using resources on your computer again to play that game. Those things start to get compounded on each other, and it's more stress on that single PC. That's why people might opt into having that second dedicated gaming PC, or in my case, having the dedicated gaming console, because I know the console will handle just the video game itself, and the PC will handle just the streaming portion of it. So again, be mindful, do your research, make sure you have something that is capable of doing everything. But I think if one thing you've kind of come across on this video, you don't need the most top-end hardware to run these programs. So probably your existing computer, laptop, even if you have a second one sitting in the closet that's a couple years old, um, it might be good enough to help you. Or if you have that second computer sitting in the closet, maybe that can become your streaming PC, and then your current laptop or a desktop could be the gaming PC. So you could opt into doing that type of situation. That being said, I want to thank you guys for watching this video. I do appreciate your time, and hopefully more videos will be coming out towards the new year. Again, always check me out on Twitch. You might notice I've been kind of absent the month of December, so apologies, just personal stuff, holidays, getting sick, things like that. But I'm hoping to get back into the new year more consistently. So always check me out on Twitch. The link will be in the description. If you want to talk to me while I'm streaming and ask me any questions you have. Thanks so much, and I'll see you next time.